You are listening to the Beyond Believing podcast. I am your host, Katie Ann. I am a certified life coach, a divorced mom to 5 amazing children, and I am here to share some love and encouragement with you about healing and moving on post-divorce as a Christian woman. Stick around after the show for some details on how we can work together. You are listening to the Beyond Believing podcast, episode number 43. All right, friends, welcome to episode 43. I realized this week that I'm just coming up on a whole year since starting this podcast. I was just kind of reflecting a little bit about what this last year has looked like for me and how much God has taught me, how much I've grown and how much I've learned, and just how incredibly humbled and grateful I am for what he continues to do in my life for me, allowing me to have this podcast. It's just mind-blowing. Okay, and as I have been thinking about this and what he has really done for me and how much I've learned, this week my mind has been on boundaries, reflecting on evolution, I will say, of what that has looked like for me, specifically post-divorce. And I will say I did start to learn about setting and maintaining and enforcing boundaries in a healthy way when I was still married. I was going through this personal refining process because I will tell you this, friends, pre-divorce, because this has been actually on my mind quite a lot. Divorce is not the catalyst for a glow up for you. I'm just going to say that. What was the catalyst for me was starting to understand and recognize my identity in God. Yeah, that took a lot of refining for me. That quest for me began while I was still married because I truly did not want to go through a divorce. My desire was truly to work through everything there, even though I had grappled and wrestled with the idea that I was in a marriage that I knew was not godly, that I knew was not what I wanted my children to copy or learn from. It definitely wasn't anything that I wanted them to believe was a standard to be following. I still knew and believed very firmly, and I still do, that, marriage is a sacred thing. And because I grew up a child of divorced parents, I understood exactly the gravity of the consequences of divorce on myself, my children, my ex, and so many other things. I had firmly chosen to fight for my marriage and give my absolute very best. And I even went through this period of, if that's really what I feel like God is leading me to, and I would be willing to start over with a clean slate ever again. If I would ever be willing to do this again, what would I be willing to do differently? I pondered on what some of those things were. Things I knew that I was not doing my very best at, things that I knew I needed to change, things that I knew that I was not helping my marriage in any way. And so I decided that if I was willing to put forth any type of effort or energy for any future possible relationship ever, I was going to put it forth in my marriage first. So those were some reflecting moments, and that required me to learn about setting boundaries. And I don't mean just for my relationship with my ex-husband. I mean in my relationships outside of my home, outside of my immediate family, with myself, with my family. That required a lot of self-reflection and self-awareness and understanding that accountability, quite honestly, acknowledging where I was falling short and where I was contributing to this unhealthy dynamic and refusing to continue in any of those behaviors or characteristics, regardless of what my ex-husband was or was not doing. I just had to really dig into what boundaries are as I'm getting more interaction and conversations with women struggling post-divorce and really wanting to find love again. This was really a foundational tool that I learned. So I just had to share this today with you all because we do not, as a society, we're not taught this socially, what healthy boundaries are, what they look like, what they are not, what they do not do, and how you maintain them or enforce them in a way that is healthy. We're going to talk about it today. We are going to be talking about biblical boundaries. What I love about God and His Word. I mean, quite honestly, there's a lot. I can't say just like one thing, but what I have come to understand, I guess is a better word or description there about God and His Word, is that it reminds us and points us to Him, but it guides us in a way that really can be so specific and personal in a way that you cannot get outside of the Word. I just want to remind you that all your answers are truly going to be found in the Bible. It's a beautiful thing, and in your relationship with God. I am listening to Entry and End Times series by Philip Anthony Mitchell, which has just blown my mind, quite honestly. He is talking about the real Christ in this one that I was listening to. What he said was that those who understand their identity live in clarity. I just thought that was so beautiful. But this is what I'm trying to share with you about why it's so important for you to build and maintain a relationship with God and His Word. Because the more you do that, the more clarity you are going to have around your identity and His. And those two things are truly foundational for you moving forward with God on this journey. If you have any desire at all, any inkling to follow God, you must understand His identity and yours. It makes a very big difference in your life. That's what I'm going to say about that. So, boundaries, friends, we're going to talk about what they are and what they're not, how to set them, when to use them, and how, because this gets so misused. Understanding God, His identity, and yours makes this so much easier and so much more clear. Boundaries are about ownership, clarity, and self-stewardship. Boundary is a God-honoring decision to protect your values and your overall health. And when I'm talking about health, I'm talking about mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, and financial health. At its core, a boundary is actually something you set for yourself to maintain the standards you want to live by. It is not a way to manipulate, to control other people, to avoid necessary conversations. It is not a punishment. They are not a threat or a consequence for someone else's behavior towards you. Ever. That is what it is not. And you do not ever set a boundary from an emotional space. Quite honestly, it's never a good idea to be acting out of your emotions. But most people believe that when you're hurting or when someone has done something to upset you or crossed a boundary, that you have not even understood you had before for yourself. I'm going to talk about a little bit whether or not you want to be vocal or not about boundaries, but they are not ever something you do as a result of a feeling you're having. I'm just going to say that again. A boundary is not something you set, enforce, or maintain as a result of a feeling you are having. Boundaries are truly about clarity and discernment. You utilize these. It's not about walls. They are wisdom in action, protection, and clarity. Okay. Proverbs chapter 4. I love the Proverbs. I know I've said that so many times, but I really do. I really love Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 4 is reminding us about wisdom in God, His understanding, seeking out His clarity. Proverbs chapter 4 verse 23 says, "Keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life." You do need to guard your heart, friends. You also need to guard your mind. This is basic spiritual warfare. Armor of God, Ephesians chapter 6. You must understand there are boundaries you put up to protect your heart, to protect your mind, to protect your spirit, to protect your physical health and your financial health. It isn't about, again, just being selfish. It's not about, again, punishing another person. It is, what do I need to do to maintain the standards that I say I want to live by? I'm going to share something else. I love my Bible in 1 year with Nikki and Pippa Gumbel. It was a really helpful tool for me in learning how to understand the Bible and how it's one big story. That was really helpful for me. But on day 95, Nikki shares about this sermon he listened to called The 5 One Things. He listed out that there are 5 different verses, only 5, in the Bible that mention one thing. And it has got me thinking ever since then, these different one things. One of them is Philippians 3:13. And it says, "But one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead." This is the essence of a boundary, friend. Putting behind you the things that no longer need to be in your life and moving forward and focusing forward to what lies ahead. Your power always lies in focusing on what you can control, which is yourself. The things you do, the things you say, the things you think, and the things you feel. All of those require a lot of exercise to master and continue to utilize. Boundaries are just one of those tools that you utilize to do that. You set and use boundaries with discernment, and I'm even going to say a place of humility, because it's not about controlling others. They're about living in self-control and honoring others. A boundary is something you do for respect out of yourself and another human being. It is saying no to things that are a violation of your values or your time, which could be your value. Some of you are very limited mentally or emotionally or financially or physically or spiritually. Doing things to purposely deplete you beyond your own capacity without the strength or guidance of the Spirit is a violation of your own self-respect. I was listening to a podcast from my coach, Brooke Castillo, last week. She's doing this series on how to be a badass. She said, self-love is not the same as self-coddling. I've just been thinking about that so much. There's such a fine line between I need to understand that I may be past my point of capacity and I need to take a little break here versus I am just uncomfortable. And I don't want to be any more uncomfortable by pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. There is a very fine line between this self-love and this idea of becoming a victim or being a victim. A boundary is established to help you no longer be a victim. It is sometimes simple things as even for yourself, I no longer talk to myself this way. I no longer engage in conversations that are like X, Y, or Z. If you have been in a relationship with an aggressive narcissist, this is what you need to tell yourself. I no longer tolerate someone talking to me in a disrespectful way. And total side note here, if you're dealing with an aggressive narcissist, like a true personality disorder, aggressive narcissist, do not ever communicate your boundaries to them. It's just like fuel for their fire. Oftentimes, you don't even need to communicate most of your boundaries to another person unless you are trying to maintain a healthy relationship. We'll talk about how to do this here in just a minute. I want to talk about this again, the appropriate use first. An appropriate way to use a boundary is to clarify where you're coming from, what you are and are not willing to do or not do, and then you have to stick to it, friends. I'm just going to tell you right now, if you are not used to being an enforcer of boundaries, if you have never set them before or had to maintain them, and you're just learning some new information here, like I'm so glad you're here. But listen up, because if you're a people pleaser, you realize that you are allowing everyone to walk all over you and you're coddling everyone in your life because you don't want anyone else to be uncomfortable. So you sacrifice your own self. First of all, please stop. Second of all, it's going to feel terrible. Okay. You're going to dislike it immensely. It's going to feel absolutely terrible. Just be prepared for it to feel very uncomfortable to be setting healthy boundaries. I think if you've been in this spot, you know how to set unhealthy boundaries. But this is kind of like one of those things you would imply in parenting. If you've had a child that's alive that you've had to nurture and steward and take care of, this is what it's like. You do not ever give your child a consequence or threaten a consequence that you are not going to actually enforce. A boundary is the exact same thing. You're basically setting a boundary for your child. That's what you're doing. You're saying this behavior is not acceptable. You can explain why, and you can say, if it continues, this is what's going to happen next, not as a threat, but as in this is just a natural result of this behavior. You get to choose whatever you're going to do, but I also get to choose what I'm going to do. That looks like X, Y, or Z. You do not tell a child you're going to do X, Y, or Z if their behavior doesn't stop or change unless you're actually going to do it, because they learn if you don't enforce that boundary, that there actually is no boundary. You can say all day long, but if you're not actually going to enforce it, it doesn't matter. They will continue to do whatever behavior you're asking them to stop doing. A boundary is the exact same way with other adults, because some of us are just still walking children, right? Okay. Misuses, avoiding accountability so you can hide behind quote unquote boundaries. If you have done something legitimately to hurt another person, you need to be accountable for that. Saying that I don't want to talk about that because it's uncomfortable is not a boundary, friend. Using a boundary or saying you're setting a boundary to punish or stonewall a person is also not a boundary setting because it's coming from the wrong place. Okay. We're going to go back to how to use the boundary and being uncomfortable with it. If you are new to this, I just want you to know you start using boundaries, people are not going to like it. You're going to get pushed back and it's not going to be fun. Again, it's going to be uncomfortable, but it's going to be okay. But this is also why discernment is so important, because you can't be doing this from a place of an emotional state. You shouldn't be doing anything from an emotional state. If you will stop and slow down, like this is, I will tell you here for an example, my new rule I came up with for myself, because sometimes I get emotional. It's about that time of my age where hormones are kind of a little all over the place. I have to remind myself, I am in charge of my brain. Literally say that out loud. I am in charge of my brain. I get to decide how we're going to be feeling and what we're going to be thinking about. I get to choose what kind of experience I want to have. I am in charge here of those thoughts. And when we're talking about boundaries, especially in relationships with other people, I no longer engage in conversations where people are disrespectful because, friends, tolerating disrespectful behavior from another person lets them know you do not have any respect for yourself. Other people are not going to respect you more than you respect yourself. So a boundary just solidifies or establishes what is the level of self-respect I have, I tolerate, I enforce in my life. It is not about I deserve more than anybody else. It is not about I am better than anyone else. It is simply an understanding your identity means, especially in Christ, means you, friend, have value and worth as an adopted daughter of God, period. There are just certain things that you do not allow behavior-wise to be treated. Okay, let's talk about what is a healthy boundary there. Hopefully you understand what it is not. But now we're going to talk about a healthy boundary means, for example, perhaps you choose no longer to continue in late night conversations from your ex just to protect your emotional peace. And again, if you have an aggressive narcissist, like true, I'm not talking about like buzzwords here. I'm talking about like a clinical diagnosed aggressive narcissist. They are going to blow up your phone when you start to ignore them and you start to set and enforce boundaries. You do not have to respond. Just going to give you permission right now. Anyone who has respect for another human being never, ever is demeaning or degrading you in any way. It is okay to set a boundary around the kind of conversations you will engage in, what time you will engage in those conversations, for how long, what the topics are you are willing to discuss. If you have an aggressive narcissist, for example, you may say something like, again, you're not going to establish a vocal boundary with them because they're going to just use that as fuel. You are just simply going to say, I will respond when I'm available. Another example is maybe you are having uncomfortable conversations around the holidays and you want to limit the amount of conversations you have, or again, the topics you're going to discuss. It is okay to say, I'm not comfortable discussing that in this setting. If you are willing, you could say, I would be willing to discuss it in this scenario at this time in this place. Or you can say ahead of time, I would like to not talk about this specific thing. If we want to bring that up, we're going to go ahead and you can say what you're willing to do or not do. Leave the room, take a break, come back another time. Let me know when you're ready to talk about something else. That, my friend, is a healthy boundary. So when would you set a boundary? When you recognize you are not being respectful to yourself or holding anyone else to a level of respect for yourself. This is why, again, discernment and understanding of your identity is so important. Because this isn't about, again, an attitude of self-righteousness. This isn't about getting a chip on your shoulder. This isn't about taking a higher road or being condescending. It's truly humble. It's truly a desire to be respectful to other people and yourself. Okay, I am going to share one more thought with you in closing. Boundaries are not rejection. They're protection, preparation, and establishing peace. And again, I'm going to use peace very cautiously because that's a feeling and feelings come from your thoughts. So protecting your space, what you have, your capacity, preparing yourself to be able to show up in a respectful manner to yourself and to others, and being able to be at peace with those decisions, with the boundaries you're establishing and maintaining and enforcing. Again, it's going to be uncomfortable for you if it's new, but it isn't uncomfortable because it's wrong or bad. It's uncomfortable because you've taught yourself that you do not have to enforce boundaries with people, or your value is not as high as the person that you're allowing to walk all over you. And when you stop allowing someone to walk all over you, they're not going to like it, and they're going to let you know that they don't like it. And that part is uncomfortable. Understanding that someone maybe doesn't agree with you is a difficult thing for a people pleaser. This is why having clarity about your identity and God's identity, you stop looking for validation and approval from people. You only need validation and approval from God. One thing is one of these 5 verses. It's in Luke 10, verse 42. And this is the story of Mary and Martha. Jesus coming to their house. Mary is sitting at Jesus' feet, listening to his teaching. Martha is busy putting preparations together, and she comes to the Savior and says, "Lord, tell her to come and help me." This is his response. But one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her. Setting, maintaining, and enforcing boundaries is learning what is necessary to focus on in your life. When you can do that, truly sit with God, what is truly necessary, keeping your eyes forward, letting go of what has been, and being intentional about what you want to become, what you want to be, what you want to have happen. That, my friends, is where you find the most peace with God. Have a great day, friends. You have been listening to the Beyond Believing podcast, and if you liked anything you heard today, I want to invite you to come and work with me privately. This month, I'm starting up a brand new Selah Healing case study group, and I'm looking for a handful of new women to mentor and work closely with. This invitation is very time sensitive, and I won't be able to offer this kind of personalized coaching and access to me for much longer. If this sounds like something you are interested in, find all the details at the link in my bio. I can't wait to hear from you.